sustainable and just energy systems for everyone that take care of the people, not the profit, that put lives over fossil fuels. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Louisa. Next, we're going to hear from Barry Mamadou, who's the Executive Director of Action Solidaire International and the coordinator of the Africa VUCA campaign in Senegal. Thank you so much for being here.
Merci tout le monde.
Thank you, everyone.
Je voudrais tout simplement commencer par une narrative.
I would just like to start with a story.
Avant de venir ici à la COP, nous avons réuni les communautés qui sont véritablement impactées par l'exploitation du gaz au Sénégal.
Before coming to COP, we brought together the communities that are actually affected by the exploitation of gas in Senegal.
Nous les avons écoutées et elles ont véritablement partagé leur douleur.
We listened to them and they shared their pain and concern.
Elles ont partagé leur inquiétude.
They shared their concerns.
C'est des communautés complètement en désarroi.
It's a community completely in despairing.
Certainement, vous avez entendu parler de l'immigration clandestine.
You have surely heard discussion about clandestine immigration.
Cette communauté est véritablement impactée par l'immigration clandestine. Ils ont perdu des centaines et des centaines de leurs fils qui ont péri en mer.
This community has been heavily impacted by this migration. They've lost hundreds and hundreds of their sons in the ocean.
Savez-vous pourquoi?
Do you know why?
Parce que simplement, c'est des jeunes qui comptaient sur la pêche comme activité pour se nourrir et nourrir leur famille.
Simply because these are youth who depended and counted on fishing to feed them and to feed their families.
Puisque ces jeunes n'ont plus la possibilité de se nourrir de cette activité, c'est des jeunes qui veulent aussi construire leur avenir et n'ont plus d'espoir. La seule chose qui restait, c'était justement de s'adonner à l'immigration clandestine.
Because they have no longer an opportunity to feed themselves or gain their livelihood from fishing, they wanted to build their future and their only opportunity or hope was to emigrate.
C'est ça la situation.
That's the situation.
Donc, considérez tout simplement que ces communautés attendent beaucoup de choses ici de la COP. En venant, ils nous ont dit ceci.
So consider the fact that those communities are expecting a lot from this COP. In coming here, they told us,
portez nos voix, amplifiez nos voix, partagez nos inquiétudes, partagez également nos désarrois.
They told us, carry our voices, share our concerns, and share our demands.
Donc, c'est ce que nous sommes venus faire ici à la COP. Et je peux vous dire que nous avons fait de notre mieux. Nous avons parlé à la presse, nous avons parlé à certains dirigeants et nous leur avons dit certainement la situation qui se passe actuellement, en tout cas au Sénégal, surtout avec les communautés de pêcheurs.
That's what we came here to do, and we have done our best. We have spoken to the press, we have spoken to some leaders, and we have shared these concerns.
L'Afrique, le Sénégal en particulier, nous avons besoin de développement parce que nous sommes un pays pauvre. Nous avons besoin d'énergie. Mais nous avons besoin d'une énergie propre. Nous avons besoin effectivement de développement, mais nous ne voulons pas que pour se développer, on détruit des vies, on détruit tout simplement des espoirs.
We need development in Senegal because we are a poor country. We need energy, but we need clean energy. We want development, but we don't want development that will kill people, that we don't want development that will kill our hope.
Donc, je ne vais pas être long, mais ce que je voulais juste dire comme message, que c'est un espoir. L'espoir est né à travers cette alliance Sénégal-Allemagne pour une justice climatique. C'est un espoir.
This simple message, the hope is that hope is born of the Senegal-Germany People's Alliance.
Je remercie ce peuple allemand qui est là, qui est debout depuis le début avec nous. Je les remercie pour leur détermination. Et je pense que nous pouvons et nous pourrons cheminer avec ce peuple digne d'Allemand qui est prêt effectivement à s'associer à nos causes.
I thank the German people who have been standing here with us from the beginning, these people who are determined, and we know that we can continue this fight together with them.
Maintenant, je finis pour dire ceci. On a parlé de Send Germany Alliance for Climate Justice. It's not only for gas and oil, for climate justice. Donc, considérez que aussi, c'est pour une justice climatique et il y a beaucoup d'aspects qui rentrent dans ce cadre. Donc, cette alliance est tout simplement pour une justice climatique dont le gaz est intégré dedans. Donc, je voudrais terminer là et vous encore remercier cette initiative et dire que nous allons rapporter ce que nous avons vu aux communautés qui nous ont mandatés. Merci beaucoup.
To finish, this is an alliance, the Senegal-Germany Alliance for Climate Justice. It's about climate justice, and that in that there's a need to address the issue of gas, and that we will bring this message and our promises back to the people of Senegal.
Thank you so much for that. Next, we're going to hear briefly from Christoph Balz, the Policy Director of German Watch and also a speaker of the Klimaallianz Germany.
Yes, thank you very much, and I'm proud to be a new member of this new alliance, both as a person and as an organization, and we hope that also the Climate Alliance, the biggest climate network of Germany, will be quite soon a partner in this alliance as well. And so far we haven't seen a deal, and I want to thank everybody in civil society, in the government and in the parliament who have fought against this in Germany. There was a plan that it should be signed by now, and so far it's a first success that didn't happen so far. We think that this is not necessary, and if it would happen, that it would not be beneficial for sustainable development and development in Senegal, and that it might undermine the climate targets we have both in Germany and the international climate targets. We have in Germany, we might have really a bigger problem that 45% of the gas will not be there next year. This year it's not such a big problem, but next year it's really a big problem. But Senegal can't deliver if there is new resources before 2017 or later. So this doesn't help at all for the big gap we have at the moment. So it's not the answer for the problem we have in Germany. And in 2017, if we now rapidly increase renewable energy and energy efficiency, maximum 1/5 of the gap is still there. We think that nearly all countries who have moved to gas and oil fell in the trap of a resource curse, and so a small elite earned the money and the big part of the people were the losers. So we are strongly supporting a CHET-P, which will support energy efficiency, renewable energy and a just transition in Senegal, but without supporting new gas resources into Senegal. Thank you.
And to bring us to a close, we're going to hear from Dean Bebe from Don't Gas Africa.
Thank you. Earlier this week, the German Minister for Development was asked around the gas developments in Senegal. And she responded that if Germany is to invest in gas in Senegal, and if Senegal does not want, Senegal has every right to say no, and that Germany at this point is investing in renewable energy. That brings about the question that when she does say Senegal is saying no, does that no mean this is the energy minister or is it the German people speaking? And that needs to be very clear. The Don't Gas Africa campaign supports the Senegal-Germany People's Alliance, because fundamentally this is evidence and essentially that the people have spoken. And we need to hold Germany accountable to their words. If the minister says the people say no, and clearly this is a symbol of the people, then we shouldn't expect any gas developments in Senegal. Essentially, the dash for gas is a dangerous, short-sighted, capitalist utopian dream that has got no place in Africa's failed energy system. We refuse for damaged socio-economic livelihoods, and we stand for this alliance because throughout these 2 weeks, at every action, we've screamed out there, people power. And this alliance is but a first step to what we mean by people power, to what we mean by human rights, to what we mean by a people-centered free energy system. This is but a small step towards an Africa People's Alliance, towards a global people's alliance, where we finally say no to fossil fuels and give the people power and give people the voice. Thank you.
Thank you so much to all of our speakers. I'm afraid we do have to clear the room because the next press conference is happening, but all of these wonderful people will be available for questions and further interviews in front of the door, and I think I just want to repeat it again. The fight has only just begun, that we have to fight this fight is absurd, that in the year 2022 we have to say no again and again to fossil fuels is absurd, but we are ready to fight that fight and we are standing here together and we're very excited to see what comes in the next few weeks. We've only just started, you're going to be hearing a lot from us.
Restoration as its core. We are part of the Ecosystem Restoration Camp Network, and we are proud to be an Egyptian initiative. Myself, I came 12 years to Egypt and explored this place that was founded in the desert. As you can see here, a desert is not a very easy environment to start, but a miracle eventually happened because my grandfather-in-law, he was very moved by the challenges in the 1977 and he wanted to set an impulse for cultural renewal and for human development and for ecosystem restoration, where sustainable development is part of the core mission and where every human individual can unfold its potential and where business is part of the solution and following ethical and environmental sound principles. So thanks to this visionary who had this dear to his heart and people who joined this mission impossible, we are seeing something that is growing today, and we will hear more about that later from Nagla, how this is growing. When you see these pictures, you can understand what happens after 45 years when you reclaim a desert and when you build a community around it. It is not really an easy mission when you think about the 1970s when Ibrahim said he wanted to green the desert based on biodynamic principles. There was no biodynamic or organic market at that time, but still he engaged in this mission impossible, and I think that is a very important message to the world, that you can start even in a very, very harsh environment with persistence, and that you will make it, and that being crazy is not bad. It's a good thing, I think, nowadays when we think about the societal transformation we need. So follow your heart is the message and you will get through. But when he left us in 2017 as a community, we asked ourselves, what can we do? Where does the journey go in the next 40 years? And what we came up with is a set of vision goals that are dear to our heart, that are in 4 dimensions of life, reflecting our holistic approach, and where we kind of envision the future, how it can be in 40 years. But we engage in research in all of these fields and try to come up with a prototype where people can see that it works. And if the prototype is successful, we can engage in upscaling and mainstreaming. I want to show you this as an example for one of the prototypes of one of the Sikkim Vision Goals that is very dear to our heart, namely the one about organic, sustainable, or biodynamic, however you want to call it, agriculture. So we, of course, already have developed an agricultural model for the future, but we want all Egypt by 2057 to follow a sustainable, regenerative agricultural model. That's our vision. And we have done a lot of research why organic agriculture addresses so many societal issues simultaneously, especially when you look from it from a true cost perspective. True cost means that you include all social and environmental externalities into the equation. And then you can see that biodynamic agriculture is more efficient and more valuable for society. But the problem was that this was not yet recognized until we created a prototypes that worked with high quality carbon credits that were acknowledging one of the positive externalities from sustainable farming. I mean, in this COP we have seen so much a discussion about the potential of sustainable agriculture to turn the climate crisis around and be the major solution for climate change in terms of removing carbon from the atmosphere. And we have seen this in our own farms. We have seen that with every hectare we are cultivating, a lot of carbon can be stored in the trees, in the soil, but also avoided through compost making and renewable energy. And this is the prototype we wanted to show to everyone, especially our farmers. And when it comes to our farmers, the potential for upscaling is great. We are working with 2,000 farmers in all over Egypt. Nagla will elaborate on that more. But the key important message here is that every farmer with around 2 hectares in average can sequester 44 tons of carbon instead of emitting carbon. And that's a huge game changer. That's a huge also change in the life of a farmer who suddenly earns more money from the carbon.
Farming practices with the farmers, also addressing the cultural aspect, which empowering the lifelong learning and the education to co-create knowledge from them and to us to work and develop much more research on the ground. The economical aspect, which is have the fair creation on distribution of the value to all the stakeholders as a transparent of the product from where, who produce it and to where. And also the societal through working with the people to unfold their potential. The economy of love, as my colleague Max mentioned, we to address the second vision 2057, we work it till reaching by 2027 40,000 farmers. And this is not enough only for SECAM as a private sector. We need to disseminate it and upscale it to all over Egypt. That's why we are working with the civil society, private sectors, the government, and the Cairo Exchange, till reaching by 2057 all farmers of Egypt. The economy of love, as I mentioned, is working on research to disseminate what is the true cost accounting. This is not the product that we are paying the fees of it or the value of it. It has environmental aspect, it has impact and climate impact and health impact and societal impact. Who pays this? This is the end consumer when he gets conventional products and pay the fees afterwards on health, as we see in the last 2 years during the pandemic issue. Economy of love also is reflecting, as I mentioned, the impact trace to reflect who made this product and what is the impact of the environment to the end consumer. From prototyping, how it works, economy of love is presenting some dimensions like certification standards and how it would help the farmers to get certified afterwards, education during the learning and the awareness and sessions of what is the organic agriculture and how it would be disseminated, and as a holistic economical approach. also introducing the carbon credit initiative, which we presented here during the COP from SECAM to all over Egypt and to whole the world, which is incentivize through the carbon credit initiative the farmer just to produce the organic product to be sold like the conventional one in the market, not only for export. This to secure selling all over the products here in Egypt and get this incentive through different application and practices of organic agriculture, like planting trees, working on renewable energy, the soil content of carbon, and forming compost to sequester the carbon. Therefore, we started as Egyptian Biodynamic Association and SECAM to work with the Cairo Exchange to announce the voluntary market of the carbon credit initiative. Then the impact trace and the funding to fund some microcredit initiatives to unfold the farmer potential to find an economic life afterwards. Then we are working on the upscaling. We started, as I mentioned, with 2,000 farmers since 2 years. Now we are addressing by 2023 the 40,000 farmers. And for the all info, we have 7 million farmers in Egypt. To upscale the initiative, it has lots of work to address the climate change. Each farmer, if he has 1 fidden, he emits 5 tons of carbon each year. But he, if producing through the organic agriculture practices and working on the carbon credit, he will sequester 25 tons per year. This means that he is not working positive to the climate change, but negative, and has a great impact through producing organic agricultural products and get profit more than producing conventional products. Having said that, during the COP, since the 10 days, we are here in the blue zone and green zone, but also we're working on 10 nights, working with the economists and leaders, multipliers from all over the world to meet them all over 10 days with SECAM and with the Future Economy Forum people to have a dialogue, to have discussions, conversations, and finding some solutions and synergies to work on this vision. And proudly, and finally to say, I'm so proud to reflect my passion and my love to working with the Egyptian farmers to support them, as from the concept each day is a school day, and I'm learning from all the people each day. Thank you.
Well, we don't have much time, but I would just like to say that we don't need to wait. We don't need to think that the policymakers or the legal or the financial communities are in the lead on restoration. The real leaders are the people who are working on the ground. Anyone who's making a compost pile or planting trees or restoring the infiltration and retention of water is doing more than coming into a temporary building with diesel generators to blow air conditioning out through open doors in the desert while negotiating emissions control.
I can fully back that, but first you. I think we should do next year a meeting where we celebrate greening the desert together, and we talk about climate change and addressing it on the farm, and be connected with a nice festival. What do you think?
I think by next year we would announce the 3rd version of True Cost Accounting to all people, with all the impacts on environment, health, and cultural and societal. This would be after the currencies changing and the floods, and also the much more impacts we realized through the practice of the humans since decades. Thank you.
I hope, inshallah, next year like we have more and more green in the green desert, and inshallah we have more goals to conserve water security, inshallah, next year. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Please join the Ecosystem Restoration Camps movement.
Thank you, Mina. I'd like to turn now to Karen Orenstein from Friends of the Earth US.
Thank you. Can everybody hear me okay? Okay, great. So I'm Karen Orenstein, Friends of the Earth US. The US is generally not a fair player in UNFCCC negotiations. They're bad. But here, as a colleague said to me, they're outstandingly bad. And President Biden doesn't have to be that way, and he needs to get his team in line. So having passed the Inflation Reduction Act, which is the United States' biggest climate bill ever, the U.S. does not have to prove its climate credentials here by beating up on developing countries. The U.S. posture of blocking a loss and damage fund is based on the fear that the United States won't be able to contribute to the fund, and that's very likely to be true at least for the next few years. But so what? That doesn't mean the rest of the world shouldn't be able to set up this fund. In fact, the United States could gain tremendous goodwill here at Sharm el-Sheikh by allowing a fund to be established. All they have to do is nothing, and the world will love them for it. It's undeserved, but that's how it goes. And let me also say that it is hard to hear John Kerry champion 1.5 degrees and say that the U.S. will not back down on 1.5. Do they think people here are stupid? The U.S. is the biggest reason we're in the climate crisis, and the U.S. is still at it, right? The U.S. is on an international liquefied natural gas, or LNG, junket. It's already the biggest LNG exporter on the planet. Just yesterday, the U.S. authorized another LNG project in an environmental justice community in Louisiana, and there's more on the way. There's another 13 facilities that have already secured the necessary permits that have yet to commence construction. There's an EU-US energy task force created in the aftermath of the Russian invasion, and its mission is to secure another 50 billion cubic feet of LNG exports from the US to Europe. That initiative is co-led by a State Department veteran who spent the Trump years as an LNG executive. So the US hypocrisy here is extraordinary. I'll just end by saying if the US can't lead, which it cannot, then it should just stay quiet and get out of the way. Thank you.
Thank you, Karen. Now I'd like to turn to Sumya Dutta from Friends of the Earth India, who's going to speak about carbon markets.
Thank you, Shara, and very good afternoon to all of you. By now, all of you probably have seen what is happening in the carbon markets, and all of you surely know that over the last 15 years or so, most of the quote-unquote actions of reducing emission has gone through these sham carbon markets. All of you are familiar with the questions of after the Paris Agreement and Glasgow, the Article 6.2, 6.4, and the dangerous references that are being brought up again and again about carbon dioxide removal to ocean geoengineering and also land-based CDR. Also the references to nature-based offsets, and all of these, or most of these, are again targeting the people and the land of those southern countries which are suffering right now, which have suffered over the last 15 years very, very strongly of the climate extremes. Let me not go into details of the technical text and all. Let me quickly bring to you what has happened out of this carbon market implementation. In our country, in my country, there are 1,200 plus carbon market projects which came in. And these are all through CDM mechanism, the earlier avatar of carbon market. I'll give 3 quick examples. In central Indian state of Madhya Pradesh, one big coal power plant, 4 gigawatt coal power plant got carbon finance, and that carbon finance is now the CDM money, it's the carbon market money, is nearly $100 million. And that power plant was enabled to evict n number of thousands of indigenous people, what we call Adivashis or tribes, of Baiga, Panika and Gond people, from their traditional forest lands for the mines that is connected. That has polluted the entire land, and that has created a reign of terror in that whole area with the government in league. Let me quickly transfer to the westernmost state in India called Gujarat. There, one big power plant by a big coal corporation, all of you know the Australia connection, they have got for a 4,620 megawatt coal power plant carbon market money which now exceeds $120 million. And this power plant, along with another, has devastated the livelihoods of over 6,000 artisanal fish workers which fished in the Gulf of Kutch. It has completely obliterated agriculture in that area. Date and another fruit, it used to be cultivated in massive scale in that area. Let me come to the last example that I give. We have done 28 such studies on different projects, and in not a single one, the communities and the people who are already the sufferers of climate extremes, climate change impacts, have benefited. They have been doubly impacted. The last example I will give is one of the biggest solar power plant in the world. It's in the state of Rajasthan, western state, and it's called Vadla. As a result of a massive coal power park, now these are solar parks. Instead of coal, the same companies with coal connection in Australia and India has set up this massive solar power park. And as a result, something like 2,600 pastoralists have lost their pasture land. In the desert areas, in the arid lands, the only remaining water sources, there are very few water sources in those areas, sweet water sources. These have gone to the solar power companies, the mega solar companies, and as a result of this, these people have been forced out not only from their own pasture land, but they are unable to now get enough water for themselves and their animals. I will end by saying this. We have seen carbon market projects over the last several years, more than a decade. The carbon market mechanism has not reduced the emissions in the buying countries. It has not reduced the emission in the selling countries. It is a complete scam, and that's why in our countries and throughout our networks, throughout the world, we will resist these carbon market mechanisms. And from our countries, from the southern countries, we strongly resist. And the newest and latest attempt of getting into this market to the blue carbon route, 12 million plus small-scale artisanal fish workers in Indian coastal areas are now threatened because in the lure of this carbon market money, the governments and corporations are coming up in their land and notifying this land will be used for quote-unquote conservation. So we reject this sham carbon markets. We'll keep on resisting both on the ground and on the front of negotiations and technical things, and we'll fight this out at all fronts. Thank you.
Thank you, Soumya. Finally, I'd like to introduce our last speaker, who's Tatiana Roa from Friends of the Earth Colombia. Tatiana will speak in Spanish with interpretation. Thanks.
Thank you, Sara. Buenos días a todas y a todos. En Colombia, mi país, las intensas lluvias de las últimas semanas han dejado 500,000 personas inundadas y otras han perdido sus viviendas y formas de vida por los deslizamientos. Esta realidad no es solo colombiana, sino de toda la región de Latinoamérica y el Caribe. La crisis ha dejado miles de desplazados ambientales entre humanos y no humanos y enormes costos económicos.
Good morning to all. In my country, Colombia, the heavy rains of the last few weeks have led to floods that have affected 500,000 people, while others have lost their homes and livelihoods due to landslides. This is not only a reality in my country, but in the entire Latin America and Caribbean region. It has triggered thousands of beings, both human and non-human, to be environmentally displaced and has resulted in enormous economic costs.
Los impactos de las catástrofes provocadas por la crisis climática agravan las desigualdades y destruyen la infraestructura física y social de nuestros países. El riesgo inminente de una mayor intensificación de los fenómenos climáticos seguirá afectando la productividad agrícola, destruyendo los medios de vida de millones de personas. Además, agudizará la crisis alimentaria y profundizará la migración ambiental.
The impacts of the catastrophes caused by the climate crisis exacerbate inequalities and destroy the physical and social infrastructures of our countries. The imminent risk of a greater intensification of climate events will continue to affect agricultural productivity, destroying the livelihoods of millions of people. Furthermore, it will exacerbate the food crisis and deepen climate migration.
La crisis climática es una realidad dura para América Latina y el Caribe, como para otras regiones del mundo. Sin embargo, los países responsables de ella, de manera irresponsable, siguen sin asumir soluciones reales y atienden a las presiones de las corporaciones de combustibles fósiles que se lucran en medio de la más profunda crisis económica, ambiental, energética y climática que enfrenta hoy la mayor parte de la humanidad.
The climate crisis is a harsh reality for Latin America and the Caribbean, as well as for other regions of the world. However, the countries responsible for it irresponsibly fail to adopt real solutions and continue to give in to the pressures of fossil fuel corporations that are making profits in the midst of the deepest economic, environmental, energy, and climate crisis facing most of humanity today.
Pero mientras las personas por la crisis climática personas afectadas por la crisis climática crecen cada año, las negociaciones climáticas continúan desconociendo las soluciones reales, como es avanzar en el desescalamiento de la extracción y quema de hidrocarburos y carbón.
Yet, while the number of people affected by the climate crisis grows every year, the climate negotiations continue to ignore real solutions, such as advancing towards the scaling down of the extraction and burning of hydrocarbons and coal.
La ausencia de un compromiso serio y real para frenar la expansión de la extracción y quema de combustibles fósiles y la eliminación gradual del carbón, el petróleo y el gas, con financiación para apoyar una transición energética justa y global de cara a la justicia climática, nos indica el fracaso de esta convención que sigue sumida en las falsas soluciones.
The absence of a serious and real commitment to curb the expansion of fossil fuel extraction and burning and the phasing out of all coal, oil, and gas with financial support for a just and global energy transition in favor of climate justice indicates the failure of this convention, which continues to be mired in false solutions.
Hemos venido diciendo de múltiples maneras que el verdadero y real cero es dejar los hidrocarburos y el carbón en el subsuelo. La justicia climática, la transición energética justa, solo será posible con un cambio de sistema que aborde las injusticias con las personas más vulnerables.
We have been saying in multiple ways that the real and true zero is to leave hydrocarbons and coal underground. Climate justice and a fair energy transition will only be possible through a system change that addresses the injustices done to the most vulnerable people.
Pero mientras la Convención no toma medidas concretas, existen esfuerzos comunitarios y nacionales. Es el caso de mi país. Destaco, además de las cientos de experiencias comunitarias, el protagonismo que ha asumido el nuevo gobierno, liderado por el presidente Petro y la vicepresidenta Francia Márquez, que han propuesto de manera audaz la necesidad de desescalar la extracción petrolera a través de algunas medidas como la prohibición del fracking, los yacimientos no convencionales y la moratoria a nuevas exploraciones petroleras y el freno de los avances carboníferos.
But while the convention does not take concrete action, community and national efforts are being made. In the case of my country, in addition to the hundreds of community experiences that are underway,
of a series of consensus decisions that will be comprehensive, ambitious, and balanced. This is a party-driven process, and the outcomes of our work here will be reached through a transparent and inclusive process. I am fully aware of the national circumstances and positions, but I am also very much aware of your willingness to be flexible and your sincere commitment towards reaching agreement. Let me now set out how I see the next 24 hours unfolding. I will now take ownership of all outstanding work, and I will look at the outcomes in their entirety. I remain concerned at the number of outstanding issues, including on finance, mitigation, adaptation, loss and damage, and their interlinkages. I call upon parties to urgently work together to resolve these outstanding issues as swiftly as possible, as the resolution will feed into finalization of the cover decision. I urge parties to engage on the text issued last night, including on the cover decisions, in the spirit of openness and flexibility, with a view to finding areas of convergence. Our collective responsibility today is to identify the highest common denominator between parties on the key issues, consistent with an implementation COP and in keeping with the provisions of the Convention and the Paris Agreement. The global community is looking to us to be bold and ambitious, and it is in your hands as heads of delegation and negotiators to push for ambitious outcomes on all elements under consideration. And I assure you that as Presidency, I am fully committed to provide all needed support to work towards this goal. I am sure that there is always consensus around progression in ambition and action, delivery on the ground, and providing the needed ingredients for just, balanced, and forward-looking outcomes. The aim will then be to refine solutions that can be reflected in the Presidency text to be prepared and issued at the earliest, hopefully late tonight. Excellencies, dear delegates, dear friends, I urge you all to make full use of the remaining time. We have a lot of work ahead of us, so let us swiftly get back to work. During these last days, we have been, the Presidency team and myself, engaged in extensive consultations with the facilitators, who I would like once again to express my profound gratitude for the efforts they have undertaken to provide accessibility and openness and a very vibrant discussion on the issues that they were mandated with. And I believe that the outcomes of their deliberations and our interactions has brought us to a position where we are hopeful and confident will lead to a successful outcome. But of course, we recognize that the hours ahead will result in an extensive round of bilateral consultations and more extended consultations that the President, I will have with all delegations to once again provide the necessary openness and transparency and the recognition of the interests of all the parties. This is a party-driven process built on consensus. It is a process built on ambition. It is a responsibility. What we do here impacts real people, impacts real lives. We should always keep that in mind. I look forward to a productive and intensive round of consultations, and I hope all delegations will bear with us and provide themselves so that we can move forward. I would like to open this meeting for remarks by delegations. Interpretation has been provided. I sense that it was needed so that all delegations will not be in any way prejudiced in conveying their positions and their remarks and their contributions in the articulate manner that they deem is in their best interests. So with that, I give the floor to Pakistan on behalf of the G77.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for your commitment and stamina in seeing this process through to a finish line. We are committed. I want to remind the Presidency and all members that we are committed to working together, to taking forward all processes in the Convention as outlined by the Paris Agreement, and working with each other to find common ground. As you said, President, this is a party-driven process, and it is up to all of us to steer a path that sends a powerful message from this COP that the implementation COP actually turned into a historic, actionable COP. So I think with those few words, I just want to say that we need to have decisions that are simple and as fast as possible. As far as the texts are concerned, for us, options 2 and 3 are not tenable. There is clarity and unity of purpose on that, and we are committed on loss and damage to keep to text 1, the option 1, with a few changes that have been submitted and we are working on with each other. So we look forward to a productive day ahead and the hope that we will finish all streams and all discussions in time by tomorrow, as you've said, Mr. President. And we thank you for your leadership and stewardship of this very, very important COP that will send an important message to the world, not just of the power of multilateralism, but of how nations can work together to come up with what are difficult paths, but paths that can save humanity and bring vulnerability to the center of this entire debate. So committed to all, once again, all the convention agreements and to the Paris Agreement, we are committed to working within those and will carry on through the day. All of us are here for with flexible schedules, and we look forward to a positive outcome because the world is waiting, as you know. And to us, your leadership is crucial in ensuring optimal outcomes for all. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I might have omitted to refer to the fact that the proposals that the facilitators had arrived at were produced yesterday, and it was our intention to give some further room for facilitators to consult. And the purpose also of this meeting was to, after having given sufficient time for digestion of those texts, that parties are in a position to direct their attention and their statements today to those specific proposals. This is for us to listen carefully and for us to enable myself as President to be able to provide the direction that corresponds with the evolving consensus that we hope will materialize. Now give the floor to Zambia.
Thank you, Mr. President. Zambia on behalf of the African Group, and we associate ourselves with a statement made by Pakistan just now on behalf of the Group of 77 and China. Mr. President, we would like to thank you for convening this stock-taking plenary with the few hours remaining, and we have faith in you and the leadership that will reach the successful outcome that we've been working for the past 2 weeks. Mr. President, as you have consistently mentioned, the world is watching and want to deliver for our people, for our continent, and for the world. We thank you and your leadership, as well as the efforts of your facilitators, and we reaffirm our support for the process such that we arrive at a meaningful and ambitious outcome here at COP27. Mr. President, we've called for a balanced progress outcome on all work streams, and we want to see the ambitious outcome on adaptation and finance. On the progress of work, while we welcome the progress and the texts that have been released, we are concerned that various agenda items on finance, adaptation, and loss and damage are still not concluded. We've taken note, Mr. President, to your new approach of taking issues now under your leadership, and we are confident that there will be progress on these issues. On finance, for example, as an implementation COP, we need to confirm that provision of support will be made available in accordance with the Convention and the Paris Agreement. Additional finance will lead to ambitious and implementable climate action. On adaptation, COP27 is referred to as an implementation COP, and probably there is no other important area of implementation than adaptation, particularly in developing countries. We have to advance work on the substantive elements of the global goal on adaptation, including agreeing on a framework for the goal. Also, we must reach a decision that guides work on the GGA. On loss and damage, we are here not only to agree on the agenda item, Mr. President, but to establish a loss and damage financing fund with a clear roadmap for its full operationalization. On mitigation, we see significant progress on the text, but we are concerned that the focus of the work program is not implementation. We have repeatedly called for the mitigation work program to be guided by Articles 2, 3, 4 of the Paris Agreement, and the African group will not support decisions that are not in line with these articles and decisions that do not respect the national determined nature of the contributions. On the cover decision, as I conclude, Mr. President, we note there are only 2 paragraphs that recall the previous decisions. We request that the COP decisions have more substantive paragraphs that guide the implementation of the convention. We want to see the decision paragraphs that facilitate the implementation of adaptation efforts and resilience. Finance, we need to follow up on the Glasgow decision on doubling adaptation finance and call for at least doubling resources for the Green Climate Fund replenishment. We welcome the transitions work program and calling for financing in accordance with Article 9. Finally, Mr. President, we look forward to hearing the result of your consultations on the issue of Africa's special needs and special circumstances and ensuring that we have a conclusive decision on this at this COP. We look forward to engaging constructively with all parties in the forthcoming consultations, and we are available to support your successful conclusion of the conference, Mr. President. I thank you for your time.
I thank you. I give the floor to Switzerland on behalf of the Environmental
Thank you, President. I have the pleasure of speaking on behalf of the EIG. Allow me to thank the COP presidency for your clear outline for the next steps. The EIG is committed to work with you and all parties to a good outcome. We count on a transparent and inclusive process, and we expect that we can interact with you and the parties on the text which you are going to prepare to find positive solutions. Let me reiterate again the EIG's commitment for a positive outcome that brings us forward in all areas, which reaffirms and builds on Glasgow and which brings us closer to the 1.5-degree objective, to effective adaptation and to effectively address the increasing challenge of loss and damage. Thank you.
I thank you. Would any other delegations wish to take the floor at this time? Rana, you have the floor.
Thank you so much, Mr. President. My name is Nakia Dramani Sam. I'm 10 and I'm from Ghana. And I am the Climate Vulnerable Forum Ambassador for the Youth. I'm very much honored to be speaking in front of you all on behalf of the 1.5 billion people who live in our 58 CVF countries. We are actually mainly young people like me. Many of us see dark clouds gathering on the horizon of Mother Earth. Last month in Accra, where I live in Ghana, was a heavy rain that burst the dam of River Densu. Cars were underwater. People were paddling canoes where they had been streets. Thousands fled houses. It was very scary. If it was going to be much worse, then I think we fear how much our future is on the line. I come here in unison. I came not long ago, and I have been observing what's going on. I've been speaking to many of you, and you guys have been really nice to me. We have brought with us a campaign called Payment Overdue. I am sure you already know about this. Yes, you are very smart, because some of the communities in my country, Ghana, are paying heavy prices since our planet was lit on fire by some people. This puts a simple question on the table of these fire starters. When can you pay us back? Because payment is overdue. I met Mr. John Kerry. He visited our pavilion earlier this week. He spoke to us and he was very nice to us. And I think next year he'll be 80 years old. I'm sure he has children and grandchildren. Well, I'm 10, and by the time I'll be his age, God willing, it will be the end of this century. Our new CVF Lancet research says that by then, several million, especially older people, could die worldwide every single year due to the overheated planet. As we say in the CVF, the fate of the most vulnerable will be the fate of the world. If we stop warming at 1.5 degrees, as we agreed in Paris and again in Glasgow, nearly all these deaths won't happen. But if we even go at least high up to 2 degrees, only half of these terrible deaths will be stopped. One lady spoke here about IPCC, saying that there's less than 86 months to go before we hit 1.5. And I'm already much older than that. So dear people at this COP, I appeal to you, have a heart and do the math. It is an emergency. If all of you were to be young people like me, wouldn't you have already agreed to do what is needed to save our planet? Should we let the youth take over? Maybe only the youth delegation should be at the next COP. Right now, I kindly ask you to pause for a second and spare a thought for our children and our grandchildren and our nieces and nephews, or remember yourself at my age. Mr. President, it is my real hope that this COP27 will act for us. I'm sure nobody wants to betray us. Today is Friday, and like I'm doing, kids around the world have been absent from school on this day to show how much they care for the planet. Please be so kind and hear this request we have for you. 1, decide here to do more of your fare and share the 1.5 as rich, powerful, and polluting nations. Please do not renege on your responsibility. Do not come back next year, yet to another COP empty-handed. 2, decide now, again, if you are rich and powerful nations, rich enough to provide funds to help the ones who are suffering the most and causing for climate disasters, not caused by us. Please do not leave our communities exposed and hurt and out of pocket whilst we are holding more and more of these COPs. You will just get older and older, and I think you're already old enough. I know you wouldn't want to be judged severely come tomorrow. You wouldn't steal our planet Earth from us whilst we are on this land of peace. Show us your courage. Be our heroes instead. Act here now. When is now? If not today, Mr. President, I am trying to do whatever I can. I have written a book called Trees for Life to help children in my community understand environmental issues better. I have started my project called the One Child, One Tree Project for the millions of youth back there in my country. But no matter what I do and no matter what all of the youth around do, this problem is too big. We are not the future unless we also take action. Please, climate delegates of the United Nations, be our heroes in Sharm el-Sheikh. I am closing, and in closing, I would like to recite a verse from my poem. Mbofra nsam ye moborankasa, inti mpanyinfo, ma hum enrenage wo hum bodo. Hum di wum bodo, osande se yanshan ye ya, yen wiazi boboyen. All I mean is, duty bearers, kindly take up your game. Thank you very much for your attention. Thank you very much.